This episode is proudly supported by Bippi Australian cultured butter, batch churned from single origin cream.
We've got a culturing process, a fermenting process, an aging process. So the butter will taste very different than, I guess, the average supermarket butter. I like to say we make butter makers butter. Like, this is the sort of butter makers would like to eat, simply because of the slow process in which we ferment and age and get the flavour into it. You know, the natural fermentation that gets all the flavours into the cream, and then once you churn it, you end up with this really rich, flavoursome butter that evolves and changes because it's a live culture that's in the butter as well.
For more information, go to peppisaya.com.au.
Especially other Italian families, that this condiment, it reminds them of their grandparents and gives them nostalgic feelings of when they grew up and how their mum used to make it or their dad used to make it. And that in itself is quite special, and because that's what our vision is and our brand is.
This is The Producers. I'm Dani Valent. Growing up in the Victorian produce hub of Mildura, Ben Circosta's family pantry was always well stocked with Bippi. Bippi? The Calabrian word for chilli is now the name of his brand of Italian chilli pastes, based on the recipe that his Nonna Emilia brought with her from Calabria. Ben's pandemic hustle has turned into a thriving young business infused with pride, not just in Italian culinary traditions, but also in migrant, endeavour and enterprise.
My name's Ben Circosta and I'm from Bippi Foods, and we make Italian-style chili. We specialise in Italian condiments, but that's our first product we brought to the market, and we're all about trying to continue the beautiful food traditions that my grandmother and all Italian, that generation that migrated here, brought from the country, and hopefully continue that on to future generations of Italian people, because it's beautiful food and we want to keep it alive even once those generations go. So that's what we're about, and it's all started with our chili. The word Bippi is a slang word for chili from Calabria, which is down south in Italy. We grew up as a Calabrese family, saying Bippi for chili for absolutely everything. So that's what we've named the brand, and what our brand is central around. I grew up in Mildura, which is a rural town in northwest Victoria. My parents and my grandparents, we had a farm there. We grew table grapes, wine grapes, and dried fruit, so sultanas and those things, so anything that was on a vine. And we, in between all these rows of the acres that we had of vines, you would have a lot of different fruits and vegetables that you'd plant just because you had the land, and you could grow your own produce. You would need to go to the market, and you would have a lot of seasonal produce right in your backyard or in your own farm. So we had lots of different fruits and vegetables during all the seasons, and obviously around the summertime up there in northwest Victoria, the chilies would be beginning to fruit. So there was always an excess amount of chilies on the plant, and different varieties of chilies. You would just have, your capsicums, and then you'd get down to your bullhorn peppers, and then your cayenne peppers, and even the little bird's eyes. There was all different types of chilies. Sometimes they'd be hot, sometimes they wouldn't be. It all depended on how they would. Sometimes the bees would cross-pollinate, and sometimes they would. Some seasons the ground would be more moist, so they wouldn't be as hot. So it was always variable, but you would always have a nibble of a chili just before you started to get stuck into it to gauge how hot it was. Which was the nature of using or eating fresh chilies, straight off the plant in our meals. And so chili was always on the table in any form. My nonna would do it in so many different ways, and my mum as well. We would roast them, add garlic and oregano, and have, we would call it a Bippi rostati, which is a slang word for roasted peppers in Italian for the Calabrians. And there was also the product that we know as Bippi, or Italian-style chili, which is sort of a crushed chili with oil, salt, and vinegar. And this was this was a beautiful sort of condiment that you could just add literally to anything, which was great. And we would just call it Bippi. And if there was a fresh chili on the table, we would call that Bippi, and everything that was chili was just called Bippi. So essentially, it would be Nonna would be at one end of the table. Oh, can you pass the Bippi? And there would be 3 different types of Bippi on the table. Which one do you want? Or that one there. So it was always front and center at our dining table. And as a lot of other Calabrians, it's front and center at most people's dining table. And I think the world is starting to become more and more accustomed to adding chili to their meals, which is fantastic. And our Italian style version of it is just adds another flavour to it. But yeah, so it was always a part of my life growing up eating. I was actually it sort of took me, I reckon, until I was in high school to really start enjoying it. I was always a little bit scared to get stuck in because, as I said before, sometimes you would have a nibble and it would be way too hot, and I would just eat the top part of the chili. But as I grew up, I think the confidence grew and started to love it a lot more. And the word Bippi, I've got the story from, I think it was year 11. I was studying Italian and I had an Italian exam, and I wrote the word chili as Bippi in my exam because I thought that's what the actual word for chili was. And it wasn't until my Italian teacher pulled me up and said, "What is this word?" And I was like, "It's chili." And she's like, "No, chili's pepperoncini in Italian." And I was like, "What?" So I figured out that it was a slang word, and from pepperoncini down to pepe, but down south in Calabria, a lot of people pronounce the letter P with B. So when we say, instead of saying pasta, we say pasta. So Bippi was come from pepe, which was quite interesting. So a very, very funny way of the slang coming around. And then, once we started the brand, it just made sense for us to create it that way and to spell it how it was said by our family. So, yeah.
Located in Victoria, on the border of New South Wales and South Australia, and reliant on irrigation from the Murray River, Mildura is a farming hub that attracted thousands of mid-century Italian immigrants. Best known for its grapes and citrus, many European families ran diverse small farms and gardens that put food on their own tables, as well as sending it to market.
Mildura up there in northwest Victoria is predominantly a lot of farms out there. Back in the day, there were a lot of smaller farms, and now generally most of them, they're large farms, usually a lot of citrus, oranges, lemons, and then a lot of grapes, table grapes that you'll find in the supermarkets and at any of your grocers are generally from that area when they're in season, which is from December through to April, May. A lot of wine grapes comes out of that area that gets exported and made domestically as well. So a lot of farmland around Mildura. It's right on the Murray River on the top west. It's northwest sort of. It's only 4 hours from Adelaide and 6 hours from Melbourne. So it's right in the corner of Victoria. I grew up there. My parents were born there, but my grandparents migrated there. So a lot of Italian, especially Southern Italians, migrated to Mildura to start farms and to find they came here with nothing, so they would come here and find something where they could start fresh as a family. And a lot of families were in the same boat. They'd have their little 20 or 40 acre farm properties, and then they would it would be enough for them to get by and build a life here, which was quite special. And that's where if you talk to a lot of Calabresi people, they've generally got a relation that's from Mildura or know someone from Mildura, because a lot of them migrated there, all from similar areas of the province of Calabria. So, yeah, that's a bit of history around Mildura. It's still thriving with its produce and farm there. Every time I go back there, I've got a lot of relatives there where they've got heaps of fruit trees in their backyard because the land, and they've just got everything there, and the fruit is, you just can't match it fresh off that kind of land. And when it's in season, especially, it's just the flavour and the textures of the fruit and vegetables that you get. It's quite special from that region.
Ben grew up in a multi-generational household with food at the centre of daily life. He took these Italian traditions for granted when he was a child, then started to gain more appreciation for his rich and special upbringing as he got older. Founding Bippi is something of a return to his roots, as well as a forward-looking enterprise.
Obviously, growing up, in an Italian family, I lived literally next door to my grandparents, so we all lived on the same farm. They were in between my house and their house was a big veggie patch, so there was food separating us. But growing up, it would be a matter of eating meals that were, homemade and homegrown, and that was a lot of the Italian culture was that kind of food and dishes that we would have that. As you'd go to school, you'd realise no one else was eating these kind of foods, and it was beautiful foods. We would make our own salamis. We would make our own sauce and wine and fresh pasta. So it was very much a part of my life, the food culture. And as a kid, you sort of take it for granted, right? You're just sort of going through it, rocking up at Nonna's just to say hello, and then all of a sudden she's bringing out some schnitzels and some leftover pasta and some beautiful food that she made for lunch, and that was just second nature for us. And then I think once I moved to Melbourne after year 12 when I was 18 for uni, like many people do from the country, and after sort of leaving Mildura, you begin to realise how special it was, that upbringing and having that food culture and Italian cultures in your life, and we still had it, but it was just different. And I think as I even sort of left uni and then I started working, I was working in the corporate world, and then when I started Bippi as a bit of a side hustle at the start, and I realised that my sort of passion lied with Italian food and building on my Italian heritage, and understanding that what I had in my upbringing was quite unique to most people's and quite special, and it was something that I wanted to share with other people and spread the word. And we've been lucky enough to do it with our products and our brand, but Italian food is so broad. Like, there's so many beautiful different flavors, and everything is so simple, clean, and healthy. And it's something now as an adult that I enjoy. And when I cook myself, it's always something that Nonna used to make, or I'm adding my own modern twist to it or something. So it's a huge part of my life. And I think as I get older and older, I'm appreciating it a whole lot more. And I want to, when I have my own children, my own family, to instill sort of the same values that I grew up with, and continue those that I was lucky enough to have with my Italian heritage. So it does mean a lot to me.
A corporate career has its advantages, but office life didn't feel like it was going to hold Ben's interest long term. When he had a bit of time on his hands during the pandemic, he started bringing the Bippi brand to life.
I started my work life. I was in the corporate industry. I was actually working at Telstra at their head office, and I was, as a graduate there, rotating through a bunch of different sort of business commercial roles. I ended up, my last role there was like a capital finance sort of based role, so it was very different to making chili condiments. And I found sort of as I'd gone through it, I'd had a lot of different experiences in marketing and digital through to distribution and a range of business corporate lenses. And then I found at the start of end of 2019, start of 2020, I was sort of losing passion for it. I wasn't really enjoying the work that I was doing, and I was thinking of things that I could start up on the side. And one day, Mum came home from the Mediterranean here in Brunswick with this jar of chili crushed in oil, and it was an imported brand. I can't even remember the brand, and it was nice. I was like, oh, yum, this is good. And then I was like, oh, well, Nonna used to make something like this, or I've seen this before. And then obviously the start of 2020 was COVID-19, so we were stuck at home for a long period of time, and I was like, oh, let's just try and make some ourselves. And so I got Nonna on the phone. Oh, what did you do? And then I actually did a bit more research and spoke to other Nonnas and what they did to try and get the perfect blend and of what we could do, and what we ended up creating was very similar to Nonna's. And I remember we did the intention initially probably wasn't we're going to make a brand that we want to sell into supermarkets. It was just, let's just make a nice chili for us to have at home. And obviously you make a big enough batch, you give it to a lot of family and friends. And people were like, this is really good. Like, they were enjoying it. They went through a jar in like 3 days, and I was like, oh wow, okay, maybe there's something here. And I'll never forget, we did like a blind taste test with a bunch of family and friends when I was sort of, deciding to take the next step with it. And I did 4 different types of my creation, or my version of it. There were sort of 4 different processes or amounts of ingredients and stuff. And then we had 4 other brands of chili oils or chili, Italian chilies that were sort of imported. And out of the 10 people that did it, all 10 people picked the same chili out of the tested samples that we had there. So that was the one we went with. And all 4 of our options were higher ranked than the other competitors. So I was like, okay, wow, maybe using fresh Australian produce and having something with that kind of flavour really makes a difference. And yeah, that's where we learnt, and we use that as our sort of point of difference, is that we're making an Italian chili, but we're using fresh Australian produce, and you could really tell the difference in the product, that what you were getting literally tasted like it was picked and jarred last week or yesterday, and now you're enjoying it. And we're lucky that our product is able to sort of keep that fresh flavour throughout its life, and we don't add any preservatives to it. We just use simply oil, salt, and vinegar, which are obviously natural preservatives, and that's exactly what my nonna and most nonnas would use. So being able to recreate something that's quite simple in terms of its ingredients, but sort of complex in its process, but then, giving such a beautiful flavour of chili was quite special. So yeah, when we decided to give it a go, like I said, I had plenty of time during lockdown working from home, and once you would log off, you'd just set up some strategies and marketing and setting up the brand and all the packaging and everything that comes with it, and the website. And I did pretty much everything myself. I had some help with the graphic design from a relative of mine, and we built the brand. And then in October of 2020, we launched it on our sort of online store and sold our first jar. And I can't remember how many we sold that day, but it wasn't a lot, but it was enough to get us excited about it. And went into a couple of the local delis and cafes to ask if they wanted it on their shelves, and it would go on the shelves, and then within a week they'd need a resupply. And I was like, oh wow, this is starting to get quite busy now. And I think our first batch, we did 150 jars or something like that, and it slowly built up to 200, 250, 300. And then by the end of that year in 2020, I think we'd gotten a distributor, and we built it to 80 stores. And I was like, okay, this is getting pretty big. And I remember one store, which was probably our first major independent supermarket, took the product on, and I said, oh, look, it's been selling around, I can't remember, it was about 10 or so, jars a week, blah, blah, blah. And we expect it to sell about 3 or 4 a week. And I was like, okay, we'll give it a go. And then in that first week, it ended up selling over 40 at this one store. And that's the moment I knew, okay, wow, we've got something that resonates with an audience here. So, a couple months after that, that's when I decided to leave my job at Telstra and go full time into this. A lot of the money that I'd sort of made with my salary, I could put into the business, which I was lucky to do, having started it on the side. And I think that was massive as a help to fund it and get it up and going, because we've sort of bootstrapped our way from there. And as you're growing, you're spending a lot more on holding stock and growing a lot more. So it was pretty important to be able to fund it ourselves like that way. And from there, it's just slowly grown organically a lot. And we've had distributors come on board that have definitely supported us along the journey to find new stores. And we've got a food service customer base too now, which is great. So we're sort of constantly supplying with them, and we're into Woolworths, which is good now. So we've got some supermarkets on board. So it's growing, and we're looking at innovating and doing wonderful things. But that's how it started, and it was you look back now and it's quite a crazy sequence of events, but when you're in it, you kind of just ride in the moment and you're trying to make it work as best you can, saying yes to everything, and just making sure that the product is good and the product remains good, and there's no change in it as you grow. That was important for us, but yeah, that's what happened at the start.
Do you like it hot? Ben talks through the range of Bippi products and offers a few serving suggestions.
So we've got three different heat levels in our Italian style chili, and we've also got a chili olive tapenade. But my personal favourite is our hot, which was our original. It's our middle of the road, medium heat. I say it's like a 5 out of 10 heat for me. So I spread it in, like when I have a panino, I spread it in a panino with like fresh cutlets that my nonna's made with some ricotta and some roasted peppers and then some spinach, and then I'll put the olive tapenade on the top side of the panino, and it's just a beautiful hit of flavors, and in a panino you cannot go wrong with it. Just adds the perfect spice to it. But it's also hard to go past it in a beautiful bowl of pasta, and that's when I probably use the extra hot, because I'll put a good couple of teaspoons and stir it through, and it just mixes through the sauce perfectly. And I think I love the fact that I know with a teaspoon now roughly, how hot it's going to be. And, when I was growing up, you have a fresh chili, or even now when you get a fresh chili, you got no idea how hot it's going to be until you try it. So you get a little bit more certainty with the spoon out of the jar, which is handy. But I like to say anything with carbs is sensational with it, but I can't really. I don't think I've had a panino or a sandwich or a wrap without in it Bippi in it since we started. So yeah.
It goes without saying that the key ingredient in Bippi is pretty spicy. Has Ben had any close encounters of the ouchy kind?
We're not at the goggles point. The chilies we use aren't that hot that the aroma of the fresh chili doesn't burn your eyes. If you touch your eyes, it'll hurt. So we definitely make sure no one's touching their eyes. We do wear gloves in our production when we're handling the chilies, because they can be hot. But it's interesting because it's a fresh chili, and it's when we're blitzing it up and cooking it up, it's not like a powder where it's blowing and sort of going through your nostrils and stuff. So it's not hurting us too much. But there's definitely been days where it's crept inside a glove, or it's on my forearm, and then I've woken up in the middle of the night and why is my forearm sore? And then I have a look and there's an orange mark on there from the chili we made that day, and I was like, better scrub this off. But I've been lucky. I haven't had any encounters with it, but it's great. I went at our factory when people walk in and we're in production, even outside of the kitchen in our storage area, you can smell it, and such a beautiful smell of oil cooking with this chili. And when you're in it all day, you don't smell it, but then when you come back inside and you smell it, it's delicious. Just gets you hungry. So
family isn't just the inspiration for Bippi. Ben's relations have also been crucial practical supports and cheerleaders.
A good sense of pride, I think. A lot of them are quite happy to see a product that was from the family to be, out there. And I think Nonna and Nonno, they're quite happy. And their reaction, I think initially, like when I went full time, they couldn't believe so many people eat so much chili. They didn't think there was a market for it, but which is quite funny. And they're in their 90s now. Nonno's 94 and Nonna's 91, so they're or 95, sorry, Nonna. They're so it's quite funny seeing their reaction to it. But I think they love it, and they admire sort of me giving it a crack. And that's the same thing. They when they came to Australia, they started with nothing and built a business with their farm, and I think they take a bit of pride in seeing their grandson doing that, which is great. And obviously, Mum and Dad have been big supports to me as well. We were cooking at their place for, what was it, 1.5 years, almost 2 years from when we started. We were still using their kitchen and storage in their garage and in my brother's garage. So I was utilising a lot of family support, which was a major reason why we're able to be where we are today. And I couldn't thank them enough. But I think they're all happy to see the brand grow, and they're all fans of the product. They all use it. They all love it. They're always, letting me know when they run out, and I've got to stock them up. So I think that's great too.
Creating a product that people enjoy offers huge satisfaction. What does Ben love most about what he does?
The best thing I love about what I do is that I'm involved in working with Italian food, and I'm able to share that with other people, and I love it. A lot of other people love Italian food. I don't think anyone doesn't like pizza or pasta, so it's beautiful food, and when it's made the right way, the flavours are so beautiful, and to be able to have a condiment that goes with everything around that is quite special. And hearing people's reactions to it, we get a lot of feedback from especially other Italian families that this condiment, it reminds them of their grandparents and gives them nostalgic feelings of when they grew up and how their mum used to make it or their dad used to make it. And that in itself is quite special, and because that's what our vision is and our brand is, to continue these beautiful things onto the next generations, because it creates that feeling of nostalgia. And if unfortunately, when that generation passes, these little things that they used to create or what helps us remember their legacy and remember them. And I think food is such an important part of Italian culture, and is very big in legacy of our grandparents and that have, you've grown up eating their food. And it's not just Italian culture for that matter. It's a lot of other cuisines that have that connection with food, but we're obviously able to do that with other Italians, which is fantastic. And then of course you see, non-Italians being familiarized with the product and falling in love with the product and going through, jars a week. And it's amazing to hear how we're able to spread this to other people eating food in different cuisines, because at the end of the day, it's chili, and you can have chili with a lot of things, which is great to see.
Ben Circosta has built a modern business anchored in resonant history. Bippi isn't just the Calabrian word for chili, it's also a signpost to a new brand that's sharing the addictive joys of a spicy Circosta family condiment with a broader audience, bringing pride and happiness along the way. This is The Producers, a Deep in the Weeds production. I'm Dani Valent. Stay tuned as we talk to some of Australia's best farmers, makers and growers. Follow us on Instagram at Producers Podcast or contact us via deepintheweeds.com.au.